Welcome back to Shovik Sports Shit. I'm Corey.
And I'm Austin.
In today's episode, we got some new NFL news to share today. Obviously, there's been a lot going on over the last few days when it comes to the NFL, with Trevor Lawrence signing a big, massive contract. And then we'll kind of debate on does he deserve it and should there be maybe a position cap um, along with said salary cap. We might dive in a little bit to the NBA Finals. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics on number 18.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing I saw was the Celtics have really just been paying tribute to Kobe because their last two championships were in '08 and 24. Uh,
I actually didn't even realize that.
so it's like they were paying tribute to Kobe, which that's really the only way I can get behind it because, well, fuck Boston.
Well, you see, I saw there's two pictures of Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown wearing the old school uh, Boston Celtics shirt that Kobe Bryant did his draft workout in during the NBA Finals. They were wearing that, so obviously, again, showing respect to Kobe. So uh, we we won't talk too much about the NBA Finals. We're really going to start diving really into the football stuff, but we'll probably a couple minutes of NBA final talk and kind of what the offseason looks like. Your Lakers are looking for a new coach, and then Edmonton's just not going away with Stanley Cup. Um, Florida had ample opportunities the last couple times, and Edmonton just absolutely blew the doors off of them.
Yeah, I'm glad it's turning into a respectable series. Uh, with how the NBA went, no disrespect to the Mavericks, but they kind of disrespected themselves. Uh, Sports fans really needed a decent series and a championship here. So hockey's delivering. I personally, I'm hoping for a game seven. Any series that my favorite team's not a part of, hoping for it. But uh, Edmonton isn't rolling over. I mean, nobody thought they would, but the first few games definitely kind of looked like they were going to. But uh, there's too much talent for them to not show up and kind of play how they played. So I'm kind of excited for it.
And one more thing to before we get into our football talk. Obviously, the biggest thing this weekend was massive choke job by Rory.
Yeah, uh, I you've heard me and our boy Paul talk sometimes. Some people are calling this a Rory choke job, but I think in our inner circle it was kind of just Rory being Rory. Um, this is maybe a little bit more than what he usually does, as far as kind of just folding like a lawn chair. Uh, it wasn't like he was playing terrible. He kind of just missed a couple tap ins to choke. So
Well, the amount of pressure he was putting on Bryson there, kind of in the middle of that final round, obviously Bryson kind of looked like he was slipping up. And if this was like even a year ago, Bryson probably would roles would have probably been reversed. It would have been who's going to choke first, which it kind of felt like that this weekend. And then you're 496 and 496 from inside three, and he just rimmed it.
yeah, I mean, younger Bryson was just as big, if not as big of a choke job as Rory. So I think he nailed it on that. Just watching this tournament as much as we did, even though he's a live golfer, you can kind of just see the growth that Bryson's gone over the last year or two uh, from where he was at. So I was rooting for him. I'm with anybody who kind of shows some energy, interacts with the crowd. I mean, this is as high of a stage, big of a stage as someone can
Oh
be
yeah,
on, and he was messing with the crowd on one where they wanted him to be a driver, and he pulled out a wood instead and was like messing with them, and like that's good fun. That's what the sport needs for the fans,
mm.
interaction, some excitement. So, uh, not that I would ever wish anyone a choke job like Rory did, but uh, it was entertaining.
Yeah. So congrats to the Boston Celtics. Congrats to Bryson DeChambeau. Big wins. Travelers tournament begins tomorrow. It should be a good weekend of golf. I know we've played that course a few times on the good old PS5, and we've shot rather well there with the sticks. So again, um, back to the NFL talk and this wild contract that was just signed by Trevor Lawrence. I know there's a lot of debate um, amongst people. Some say deserving, others a majority. I feel like I've seen is that's too much. Essentially, almost pretty much resetting the QB market. I think he tied Joe Burrow with per year at 55. So it's, yeah, basically tied first. The next one's Jared Goff at 53. Then at 4 is Justin Herbert, 52 and a half. Then Lamar, 52. And then Jalen Hurts, rounding it out at 51. That's basically the top six. Um, I know you had some thoughts just from seeing that list. I'll go ahead and give it over to you for a couple and let you give us your thoughts on the 55 mil for Trevor Lawrence.
It's kind of wild to me. We I already hate the fact that so much goes into one position, um, and I don't know what teams use to evaluate a player's worth. Um, I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence isn't good, and I know each quarterback contract that comes out to a quarterback who's considered franchise, they're going to continuously reset the quarterback market, which is the only reason I even see why he's the number one paid quarterback right now. But it's wild to me. He's not even he's not even a top 5 AFC quarterback, and that's just AFC. So I shrunk the list, and then not even on that. Um, he's shown spurts of being good, but I don't know if he's actually put together a full good season. Like at least when Joey B got paid, he's been to a Super Bowl. When he's healthy, the Bengals are right there with the Chiefs as far as being in contention. So I get that. But a team like the Jags wrapping up that much money in the quarterback, uh, it's really going to hurt them as far as building the team. So it's hard for me to say he doesn't deserve it because these players, I mean, they give up everything, they go through everything, they put in the work. But at the same time, should he have spent any time as the highest paid quarterback in the league? And I just don't think he should.
So looking here, going into 2024. So 2021, he threw for 3,641 yards, 12 touchdowns to 17 interceptions with a rating of 71.9. 2022 is obviously his best season to date. Threw for 4,113 yards with 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, which was a 95.2 rating. And then last year, 2023, 4,016 yards, 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions with an 88.5 QB rating. So for career, 11,770 yards, 58 touchdowns, 39 interceptions, 85.0 QBR.
To me, that was. I mean, I know it's his rookie year, but to me, that was. Let's even play it a little positive here. That was two average to slightly above average seasons sandwiched around a good one. So out of his 3 seasons, you're looking at one truly quality one, and then just even beyond the stats, no deep playoff runs. Uh, I, it's just wild to me. And I'm not saying he's not going to continuously improve and maybe earn the contract, uh, but you're asking for a lot to pay for something that you are hoping to get instead of paying for something you know what is there.
Yeah, and it shows he's 20 and 30 as a starter. So that's 50 starts, 20 and 30, 20 wins, 30 losses. Um, they did have that come from behind against the Chargers in the playoff game.
Chargers going to charge her, though.
Yeah, so I mean, not necessarily sure. 55 is where I would have put it. Um, maybe in the 50 range, 45 to 50, maybe even 40 to 45. Um,
Yeah, that
but
kind of 10-ish range.
yeah, they're kind of banking it. You know, they're kind of banking on him picking it up going forward. Um, off season, I mean, they got a few players here and there. Um, that division's going to be loaded. If you've listened to any of our previous podcasts, you kind of know where our thoughts are with the AFC South and how we think this is going to be the start of something special for the Texans.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. He's the highest paid quarterback. Are you right now, I'm not saying what you think for the season, right now, is Trevor Lawrence the best quarterback in that division?
No, no, and I know it's just 1 year, kind of
But
one
it
year,
was still a better year than any year Trevor's had.
right? And I mean, you look at it 1 year for CJ Stroud. but their roster's gotten better this offseason. Like they're putting pieces around. He's getting pieces back.
You mean it's because they're not putting 20% of the salary into one position, quarterback? And I mean, don't get me wrong. Down the road, the same thing's going to happen with them. But yeah, it's wild.
So C.J. Stroud's rookie year, 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. That's a QBR of 100.8. So I mean that's just 1 year sample size.
That's a rookie having 5 interceptions.
Yeah, and I just think all. It's not that the Jaguars don't have a good roster. The Jaguars have an okay roster. I just don't think it's near what the Texans have. Um, and we talked a few episodes back about you know Texans are living with the rookie contract for a QB right now, where they've been able to go put money where um, they absolutely need to fill in some holes, and that's what they've done. They got a couple more years, I think 2 more years, and then it's going to be their turn.
Nah,
And
they're getting that 5th-year option out of CJ.
so they're gonna. Well, I mean, they could.
I guess the extension is what, after year 3
Mhm.
is when you can do it. And I can't say I paid enough attention to CJ to know if he's going to be the one who's going to immediately want it, or maybe play that extra year on the rookie deal for the team. It's hard to know. That's wild.
Yeah, but this is just. I mean, you're seeing this trend now, right? It's like we know last offseason it was running backs weren't getting paid. Now we're seeing receivers. Justin Jefferson just signed a massive deal. Um, I think Trevor Lawrence is close to 200 guaranteed on this one. I think it was like 142 and 60 something at signing. So I mean, you know, what's the market going to look like? Now that's going to take us into, like we talked a couple weeks back. Dak's talking new deal. Tua, Brock Purdy's coming into his final year, and he's more than Hey, what's not to say Brock Purdy can't come and say, "Well, I just saw what Trevor got. I've accomplished a little bit more than what Trevor's done." So, not. I mean, it's not that I'm saying it's a bad move by the Jaguars. I don't agree with it.
And it could be kind of just like every other quarterback deal when this happens every offseason. 2 or 3 years, it's going to look probably like a bargain, even from just like a money standpoint. I mean, when the Chiefs re-signed Patrick, all hell broke loose. A few years down the road, here we are, and he's not even top 5 or 6 in the quarterback market. Now, it'll change. I'm sure of it. But it's kind of the cycle. These players reset it 2 or 3 years down the road. This number is going to fall 7th, 8th, ninth in line. And as long as he performs, it's going to look like a steal. Uh, I think the issue that we're questioning is in 2 or 3, 4 years down the road, is 55 million for Trevor still going to seem worth it? Like, does he have to go to a Super Bowl championship game? Like, 55 million. It's not even up to you to just come out and perform. At that point, you are asked to fill the holes in your roster on your own and overcome those on your own. And I don't know if I see that in Trevor. Because even the Chiefs, they have holes.
Mhm.
They're not set across the board. Not just Patrick. We also have a defensive Patrick with Chris Jones, so that helps. But these quarterbacks, when you get paid this money, you can't fill out the roster. And you're going to have to fill those holes by putting the team on your back.
Yeah, and I think, and like you pointed out, those 6 quarterbacks that we named being top, all of them except for Lamar and Justin Herbert have been to a Super Bowl. Um,
One now, Lawrence.
and now Trevor Lawrence. So I mean, you're kind of paying him like you're expecting him to get you to that point. Um, obviously Baltimore's been close, but I mean, close is still not getting to a Super Bowl. So I mean, you can take with that as you please. And then obviously Herbert hasn't sniffed it. And then the playoff game that they were in, they got their choke job. So it's just like you look at these numbers, and now you're sitting here thinking, well, these young crop of quarterbacks are getting ready to come up. Like I said, Brock Purdy, he's gonna, he actually has a couple Super Bowls. Well, one, but that one, I mean, he could have gotten 2 Super Bowls if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, we can debate the Brock Purdy one probably a little bit on for a while too, because I can have my own theory on how that one's going to go.
Yeah, I don't think Brock Purdy's going to sit there and ask for 55.
I don't think the Niners will give it to him. I think Kyle Shanahan seems like a guy who's like, I'll plug and play any quarterback. Like,
Well,
it's my system.
exactly. So it's like, does he try to come at him for like 40? or does he say, "Hey, I just want like 17% of salary, whatever the salary cap is that season. I want 17% of it." Um,
Because Brock Purdy's smart. He has to be aware that a lot of that success he's having is system and talent related around him.
well, that's the debate. That's what the Niners can come back and say, "Hey, we gave you the chance. We no one else was going to give you that shot. We did. And you just happened to fit in rather well. So it's like, you know, take the 20 mil over 25, 30, whatever it is, or we'll move on and we can draft a quarterback and on we go."
Yeah, that's my theory with that. But yeah, that the whole Brock Purdy debate with the Niners, that could go on for a while, just given the situation, that organization, and everything. But uh, it's like the complete opposite for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. The Doug Peterson, that system's good for him, but he's not surrounded like Purdy is.
No, and I think he was pretty banged up last year. Um, Obviously, they need to protect him a little better. Um, he's a good quarterback. I'm not going to take anything away from him, from his time at Clemson to what he's been able to kind of work with the Jaguars. But 55 mil, I mean, that's just a shit ton of money, and I just don't think that now is the time to give him that. But that's not for us to decide. That's GM, coach, the ownership. They kind of have a plan in place, and it's gonna. I think it's gonna create a little bit more of an issue when other contracts come up because Travis Etienne's gonna come up. They got some other younger players that they're gonna want to keep. Now you're kind of tight. I mean, look at the Cowboys for example, right? Dak Prescott set to make X amount, puts in his contract, no franchise tag, nothing like that. Now the Cowboys obviously are hamstrung by that. They got Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, who need contracts.
Yeah, think about it. The three players the Cowboys have to resign are Dak at quarterback. That market's just been reset at a very high amount. CeeDee Lamb, that receiver market has just been reset at a very high amount. And then Micah Parsons,
Who's going to reset?
he, yeah, but even in recent years with, Bosa and Watt, Garrett, like, that's also been reset pretty high.
Hmm.
Um, it does hamstring you when you put that much money in a quarterback. And it's hard because it is the most important position, honestly, probably in sports. Uh,
Yeah, I mean it is. But you also look, Dak wins the playoff game last year, or even gets into a Super Bowl. They probably have no issues re-signing him. Everyone does good things. Good things happen basically when you win. Everyone's in a good mood. You know, but when it's consistently the same shit every year, great during the regular season. The playoffs roll around and you lose to a team that you probably should beat. Um, another one that's coming up, Jordan Love. Thinking back to Jordan Love looked pretty damn good last year. I think those last probably 6 or 7 weeks of the season, you can make a debate he was the best quarterback in the NFL. The things that he was able to do, which is weird and wild because I was watching. They had some highlights of him on ESPN the other night. The dude looks identical. His mechanics are identical to Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, I'm watching some of the games last year. He would do that little hop off your back foot, like flick of the arm type Aaron Rodgers throw, and uh, it was kind of weird to see. But seeing what Jordan Love, he was working with nothing but like rookies around him on the offensive side of the
The same
ball.
receivers that Aaron Rodgers couldn't really do much with.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting here saying after 1 year I'm ready to say Jordan Love deserves what Trevor Lawrence got because that's crazy.
Not even close. Yeah.
But I think at this point you could say his trajectory could be a little higher than Trevor Lawrence's right now. Um, you were reading Lawrence's stats; they were there, but I don't know if I've ever seen. I don't know if we've ever watched Trevor Lawrence play and he's had like that moment. And it's hard to describe what that moment is, but we've all seen it. Early on in Patrick's career, just chucking it, no look passes. Like every quarterback has that moment. Jordan Love kind of had that toward the end of the season and in the playoffs. Like he had his moment.
Yeah. So you look his first full season as a starter last year, 4,100, 59 yards. So that's 4,159, 32 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, the QB rating of a 96.1. So and a
With a
good
bunch of
and a
rookies.
good chunk of those came in the back half of the
Yeah.
season. I remember watching Packers play Broncos early on in the season. Denver won that game, obviously. So
Obviously.
obviously, duh. But that didn't look like a team that was really going to do much. And I think that was around the time where people were kind of questioning, is Jordan Love the guy? And then I think they played the Chiefs, if I remember correctly, and I think they won that game in Green Bay.
Probably. We lost a lot before the Super Bowl.
But I think that's kind of when the tables kind of started turning a little bit for Jordan Love. And then obviously they just, season flows, they get into the playoffs, get a dub, so again, another quarterback who might be a little more worthy of, a payday. Obviously, just one season, so you'd like to see.
A little more, yeah.
I think this season's huge for Jordan Love in the aspect of, can you put together a similar season, if not better? Then let's talk. And I think that's kind of what the Packers are going to wait and see. So, and that division is going to be kind of weird, right? You see good things about Caleb Williams, but then you see other things about Caleb Williams. What are the Lions going to do? Jared Goff, obviously he got an extension. So, the Lions it's probably the Lions division going into the season, but we got to see kind of how it shapes out with what Caleb Williams and the Bears can do. Um, so let's talk a little bit about position caps. We kind of talked about this before we came on here tonight about, I think the NFL average for quarterbacks for the per salary cap is like 23%, 24 something percent.
It's almost a quarter of the salary cap.
Almost a quarter of the salary cap. So I think one thing that there was a question on one of the sports stations I was listening to on my drive home from work yesterday. I think Aaron Rodgers right now is at like 16.8%. So then their theoretical question was, if they offer that to Brock Purdy in San Francisco, does he take it? One of them said no. He's got to go a little higher. One said that would be perfect for Brock Purdy. So what's your thoughts on, the position and the percentage cap for per position? Because it's getting wild out there with some of these positions.
It is, and it's one of those where, in theory, it's a good idea. I don't know how beneficial it would be. Um, Try to put an example of how I don't think it would be a good idea, and we'll use running backs. Uh, and these are just made up numbers; these won't be accurate. But just say running backs are 20%. That seems high for running back. Let's say running backs can get 10%. Um, so Saquon goes and signs; he gets the full 10% of the salary cap, like he asked. Um, what's what's the stop? Well, Josh Jacobs is pretty good, but what's the stop like Gus Edwards going out and knowing that, like, well, they can't give me more than 10%, so just give me 10%. You're gonna run into where, like, everyone's just gonna want
That percent.
that percentage. Um, it's like, well, if I'm a starting running back, then give me the 10% that you're allowed, type of deal. Um, Obviously, teams can say no, and then it just creates another whole issue off of that. But in theory, I like it. Uh, but at the end of the day, that's also kind of taking the strategies away from teams. Um, I like the idea, but I don't like the idea of uh, taking. Some teams are better at it than others, and that's an advantage. But at the same time, can you be mad that you're finding a way to even the playing field? You do that already as one of the few sports that has like a true salary cap. Um, some people, like I said, some people are better, uh, but I really like it, but I don't think it's actual like a theory that can work. There's probably higher minds and brighter minds who've thought about it who might have a little better idea of how to make it work, but I don't know how it could work. Just given you're taking away some advantages for teams.
Yeah, and I think we look at generational style or generational quarterbacks, right? Patrick Mahomes, uh, maybe CJ Stroud. I don't know. Obviously, the book's still out on that one, but they can take any receivers that they have and make them good, right? It's not the other way around. And I know last year, for a good chunk of the season, people would question whether the Chiefs had receivers. Um,
No, I still question if we had
well, you
receivers.
guys won a Super Bowl, so I mean that goes out the window because they show up when they need to, right?
Right.
But again, back to the main point of, you have a good enough quarterback, they just need receivers. They don't need big name. They don't need the Justin Jeffersons, Tyreek Hills, Jamar Chase, those guys. They can take the, Sky Moore's. Uh, can't really say Rasheed Rice because he could end up being a really good receiver if he stays out of trouble. But my point is, think about all the Tom Brady teams. Um, Wes Welker was nothing
until Tom.
right. Marvin Harrison's not a good debate with Peyton Manning, but Peyton Manning had other receivers like Brandon Stokely and some of those other guys, right? So again, that could also play into your strategy of, well, we can pay our quarterbacks, but now we're only going to dedicate like 15 million to receiver room or less instead of giving the receivers the 20% or whatever the receiver market's at, unless you have that guy. So there's so many different strategies that could go into it, right? And I just don't think Trevor Lawrence can take no name receivers and make them better.
So you're saying if there was a positional cap, uh, it would have helped the Jaguars uh, as a whole to not basically. I don't know what 55% is, or 55 mil is of the salary. I think that's got to be like 25%.
Close.
Yeah. So if there was a cap limit, uh, you're saying the Jags would have benefited from that, uh, but it wouldn't have helped the players, which then that brings the NFLPA in with a whole bunch of issues. But yeah, it's hard to this would help the teams, but it's hard to this putting this in place would I don't want to say harm. Uh, it would be a downgrade for the players, which is another reason I don't think it could ever happen. Some players might be on board because they're like, hey, that might raise my floor.
Right.
But like you said, the generational talents. Let's say the receiver room was capped off at 15 million a year. Now Justin Jefferson sitting back like that's half of what I would get,
Right.
which is what half of what he got. So it's like it it'll help. It would help the teams long run, which should be what it's all about. But at the same time, uh, these once in a lifetime players, which we seem to be getting a lot more of lately. These
Hmm.
athletes are they're incredible. Uh, it would not benefit them, which is what I think the NFL is all about. Players first, they say they're a players first league. I don't. You can take that, do with it what you want, but um, there has to be a solution, whether this is it or not. Um, but we're at a point where the quarterbacks are making a fourth of the cap. Running backs are having a hard time even getting a respectable offer. Um, so it's not equal amongst positions, and it's up to the teams to determine what the importance of each position is. Uh, but right now, it feels league wide that they're just going to disrespect running backs as a whole. Um, it's a pass league. All the good teams are the pass happy teams are the ones in the Super Bowl, minus the Niners. But
Shoot run the football with Pacheco.
yeah, like what 30% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. But there does have to be a solution to make things better across the board. Right now, the quarterbacks, receivers, and pass rushers are the one benefiting from you know, these expanded salary caps, a little bit more money to throw around, and it feels like it's only limited to a few positions. Um, I don't know if the cap limit per position is the answer, but it could be a good starting point.
So my next argument with all of this is we look back at the last couple of draft classes for receivers and how deep it's been, right? I think you're starting to see a trend where this was kind of a weird draft in the sense of there was six quarterbacks, um, compared to like 30 some receivers.
Yeah,
So that could be another thing of, well, we'll just continuously draft these rookies because the rookie draft class for receivers just keeps getting better. Use the rookie contracts. You know, then it comes to a time where we got all we needed out of you, right? We understand that you're wanting this. We just can't do it. Move on. There's going to be other receivers that are coming out of the draft that we can just kind of plug in. So then that caters back to last, taking, no name younger receivers, plug them in, and keep paying your quarterbacks, right? Because this last draft, a couple months ago, was absolutely stacked with receivers.
Load,
Receivers
loaded.
receivers that are going to make impacts this year. Not just first round receivers, but you can even look at like fourth, fifth, and sixth round guys that are probably going to end up making some noise. So it doesn't really help their argument, right? Whereas quarterbacks, next year's quarterback class is going to be not good, not good, not as deep as what you saw this year. You may still have a quarterback that goes top five. Awesome. You're not going to have six in the top 15, which this year there probably shouldn't have been six in the top 15, but that's for another time.
But that just goes to show, like, it's a quarterback-driven league, and that's probably an argument that Trevor Lawrence and his camp used. Is it's a quarterback-driven league. You don't have Trevor in your corner on your team. What are you going to do? Because you're right, it probably shouldn't have been six quarterbacks, but that's what everyone's chasing. Who
Yeah,
doesn't have
we got
one?
a need.
Yeah.
You have a need. You go try to plug it in. We'll debate the Broncos stuff later on in a different episode once we get closer to the season about the Bo Nix thing. I'm still on the camp of I'm super excited for Bo Nix. Um, but obviously there's other aspects of my thoughts on that, which are for a different time. But back to, I do like the pieces that Trevor Lawrence has around him. They went and got Gabe Davis, pair with Christian Kirk. They still got ETN. But outside of that, whereas you can go over to the Texans, CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. I mean, that's a little bit better of a built team. And I just don't think the Jaguars, whether they spend a ridiculous amount every offseason. It's always they're the offseason winners. They're spending all this money um, for what, right? Like they continuously don't do anything with that, um, and I think it's hurting them because their division's getting better. Now, I don't know necessarily about the Titans. We don't know about Will Levis. We know he has a good arm. We know they got pieces for him there. I still don't like them to be near the top of that division. That's because they got CJ Stroud's in that division. And the Texans just continuously put together a good young roster they're hitting in the draft. We don't know what the Colts are going to be with Anthony Richardson. So, I mean, it still puts Trevor Lawrence as the second best quarterback in the division. And that's still because we don't really know what Anthony Richardson can do.
Yeah, and I mean, I like what Anthony Richardson has around him more than I like what Trevor has. Sign me up for Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. Uh, that's
Jason
really
Bean.
yeah, Jason Bean, Rock Chalk baby. Uh, no, and I look at it. I know you said they added Gabe Davis. Honest question: is that a step forward or a step back from Calvin Ridley? Best case scenario, it's even from what they had last year. I still think uh, the huge difference between Texans Jags. Texans are stacked up front in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
CJ's protected. Trevor's not, and it's not on him. Uh, if you're running for your life or getting hit 20%, 30%, 40% of your dropbacks, it'll take a toll, and then it really doesn't matter what you have around you. But that's also like a point of, was the 55 million worth it? Because now you're kind of hamstringing yourself a little bit on what you can do to bring in protection for him. So yeah, it's tough. I personally hope 3 years down the road it works out. I've liked Trevor Lawrence since college. I didn't think he'd be a good NFL quarterback. He has at least proved he is that. So I hope down the road this is worth it. But right now, it really hamstrings them as a team.
Yeah, and it's easy for us to sit here and say, "Dude got 55 mil. What a loser." I mean, go get your bag.
Yeah,
That's not at all we're saying. We're just kind of throwing our thoughts out there on this. And I look at, you'll hear me talk about this a lot throughout the NFL season when we do like game reviews. Um, you may see a guy only has like 7 or 8 interceptions on the season, but timing of those interceptions are everything, right? So you could have 30 touchdowns, but your 8 interceptions came in the fourth quarter when you had 2 opportunities to go for a game-winning drive. Uh, and you throw 2 picks, right? So I look back last season. We obviously was watching Red Zone. You see a lot of Jaguars games, right? The timing of his interceptions and his decision making towards the end of the games are blah, right? So I mean, 14 interceptions, cool. I say the same thing about Dak Prescott. Phenomenal numbers, But you look at the interceptions and when the interceptions happen,
or even when his numbers happen. Um, I'm not. He is a lot better than even 5 years ago as far as performing better. But a good number of his stats come from, I don't want to say when they're down a lot, but when the game it feels a little less competitive. Um, so like both ends of the spectrum of what you brought up, like the timing of your interceptions are everything. Um, nobody's going to sit back and think Patrick Mahomes has a huge interception problem. But hell, when he throws one against the Raiders and gives them a touchdown, I mean, the Raiders beat the Chiefs without completing a pass.
yeah,
So the
and
timing is everything.
I'm kind of going through their season here. So they lost to the Chiefs 17-9. I do believe they actually had a chance to win that
Had a couple.
um, early on in the season. Then they get absolute steamrolled by C.J. Stroud and the Texans at home. They lost 37-17. Um, 49ers steamrolled them. Then they beat the Texans a second time, 24-21. But then they lost to the Bengals 34-31 in overtime. Lost to the Browns 31-27. They did have a hot start to their season last year. I do remember that. But I also remember that they also had the biggest choke towards the end of the season. They were staying steady as the one seed, and everyone's like, "Hey, hey, hey!" And then this second half of their schedule happened. Then lost to the Ravens 23-7. Then lost to the Bucks 30-12. Beat the Panthers. Everyone did. Um, then lost to the Titans 28-20, and that was kind of the final straw for them. That was a backbreaking loss to them at the end of the season. So good start to the seasons. Now you want to see, hey, let's have that 8-3 start, but let's not completely shit the bed down the road. Um,
Well, and that's part of what one of the points I made early on in this episode was he's he's shown that he can be good, but we haven't exactly seen it for full season. I mentioned the one good season sandwiched around the two good ones or average ones, but it's at the same time, even that good season or this last season, he only had good stretches. And to be a franchise quarterback making 55 mil a year, your good stretches should be from game one till the end of the season. Um, you're, you'll have you'll drop a turd every now and again. I mean, it happens to everyone. Uh, but you can't have a good 7 game stretch and then follow it up with a terrible 7 game stretch. Like you just can't do that. And to pay a guy that kind of money without seeing it for a full season consistently, I think that's a very underrated character for specifically a quarterback. Consistency, just we haven't seen it with him yet.
yeah, so I'm looking at Justin Herbert's stats. Um, I'm thinking Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence can be somewhat comparable as far as like records go. I would obviously take Justin Herbert over Trevor Lawrence. If Denver were to be able to pick one of the two, I would obviously go with Justin Herbert. Last season, obviously, Herbert got hurt, but still threw for 3,134 yards, 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 93.2 rating. 2022, 4,739 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That was for 93.2 QBR. 2021 was obviously his best season with 5,014 yards, 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. That was a 97.7 QBR. In 2020, 4,336 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions for a 98.3, for a career number of 17,223 yards, 114 touchdowns to 42 interceptions for a 95.7 QBR. He's deserving of the 52.5 million that he's getting.
Yeah, so even though he hasn't necessarily won anything as far as postseason goes, uh, every season you named, barring the yardage, I think on this last season, consistently you were chalking him up to 30 plus touchdowns, 7 to 10 interceptions. Um, he was hurt this last year, but you can chalk Justin Herbert up to 4,000 yards, 30 plus touchdowns.
His pace was that, yep.
Yeah, so, but that's consistency. Um, it's happened 3 or 4 years with him now. And even in the season where he was hurt, he still put up probably what would be Trevor Lawrence's second best season. So Um, yeah, even though even comparing those two, um, nobody thinks either one's the best quarterback in the league, but they're both paid like it. Um, Neither one has really won postseason anything, but one of them has performed consistently. When Justin Herbert's healthy, game in and game out, you know what you're getting. And I don't know if we feel that way with Trevor. Are you going into a game? Is this going to be the one where he's slightly off? Is this going to be the one where he's running for his life? Is this going to be the one where he is turning it over a little bit? It's hard. Justin, I'm going to sound like I'm talking mad shit, but Justin Herbert, I think, is light years better than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately for us in the AFC West, it's going to maybe take a turn with Jim Harbaugh there.
For you guys,
Oh, you know, I'm still the jury's still out on that. We're going to see how good Justin Herbert really is because now you have no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams. Instead,
no Austin Eckler.
you got Lyle McConkey, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Palmer. So that goes back to what I talked about earlier. Can your quarterback take those? You know, we know who they are because we love football and we're pretty familiar with most rosters. But you know, to an average fan who they don't know anything about the Chargers, they have their following. They're just paying attention to their teams. Now we're really going to see how good Justin Herbert really is.
Yeah, but even using the Chargers as an example, you can see what their game plan was once they signed Herbert. They had to get rid of talent,
Hmm.
and that's just what it. I mean, we could go through that list. Uh, we won't start with the Jags because that's just going now. But even the Bengals to pay Joe Burrow, they're going to lose T. Higgins after his franchise tags. But they've already had to lose Jesse Bates. I think they've lost one other one. I can't off the top of my head think about it. But then you go to the Lions. His big contract hasn't really kicked in yet, but somewhere down the road, uh, we might be having a conversation of what they're going to have to give up. Uh,
They actually went on a spending spree and they started re-signing some of their young guys that they needed to. So that's again, his contract hasn't kicked in yet.
yeah, and the Chargers, they seem like they're kind of following the Chiefs game plan, which is smart. You see them up close and personal. Pay your quarterback, get rid of the receivers around him, uh, and hope he can carry. You want everything on your roster to be set in stone. I'm paying my quarterback, so I'm hoping he can elevate the receivers. Kind of the point you alluded to earlier. So when you pay these quarterbacks this money, it does hurt your roster. Um, you know, Chargers are, they're trying to beef up the line, get young at receiver, and try to rebuild the defense. I know what the Chiefs have been doing since getting rid of Tyreek and not paying receivers.
When they got two good running backs too,
Well,
maybe. I mean, Gus Edwards is usable. Just can J.K. Dobbins stay healthy for the Chargers? I mean, that's going to be a little bit more production. Obviously, you're losing stuff with Eckler and his touchdowns, but those are two running backs that you can kind of lean on.
yeah, and I mean, you're paying Herbert 50 plus, so you're asking him to fill those holes, and you have every right to
Yes.
when you pay a quarterback that amount of
Yes.
money. Um, Now you just got to ball out and show that you're worth it, and that's essentially where I want to end it on Trevor Lawrence as far as like, all right, man, you wanted this money, go ball out, show us you were worth it. Um, Jalen Hurts, big money, didn't really earn it this last year. I still think they'll be okay. That's a lot of talent around him. Who was the other one? Lamar Jackson. I mean, they win every year. They'll be right there in the playoffs every year. I don't know if that's good enough for Baltimore, but they're basically asking him keep being you, and we think we'll break through that ceiling at some point. So like everyone on that list besides Trevor Lawrence has kind of already done it,
And I,
besides Herbert. But
and I think with those two, Jalen Hurts and Lamar, they also bring the running aspect of it too. It's like, yeah, they're going to get their passing yards, but Lamar's obviously going to get close to 800, 900 rushing yards, whatever it is. Jalen Hurts is kind of the same thing. Um, so their passing numbers, while skewed a little bit, we can look at the running numbers, and those are up a little bit with touchdowns as well. So I don't necessarily know if that has any bearing on what Trevor Lawrence is and does, but um, those guys, those two, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, just have kind of that back end of their game. Obviously, Lamar's trying to get better about passing, but it's always there for him to take off when needed.
yeah, and the one point I want to bring up about kind of these quarterback contracts, they're kind of two different sides of of the spectrum here. Uh, so I'll see what you think here in a second. But two quarterbacks that aren't on this list is top 6 or 7 that we've been talking about. As of right now, is Patrick and Josh Allen. Um, we can go with the Bills. You would think that they would have a pretty rock solid roster, but this offseason they kind of gutted it. Uh, so even though they don't have a top 5 or 6 salary cap quarterback at the moment, their roster's kind of depleted. And then you look at the Chiefs. They have the best quarterback in the league who's not top 6 or 7 or 8, but their roster's kind of stacked for at the moment, the year by year thing. Um, but it's kind of the Bills and Chiefs seem like they're kind of in the same position, but one seems to be uh, basically maneuvering the position better. And I'm curious on like what were the Bills think because they're not even. I don't think I saw Josh Allen might be 10th or 11th on the annual salary, and they just let everyone go. Um, but those are probably the two best quarterbacks in the league in my opinion, and they're not even in the top 7, 6 or 7. But kind of two different levels of expectations going into the year, um, which will kind of counterproductive. Kind of just argue our own points on this. Um, two quarterbacks not getting paid doesn't necessarily mean your roster is going to be stacked. Uh,
No, and this is going to go back to kind of what I said earlier, as far as now we're going to see how good Josh Allen is with the uh, not big name receivers. I do like Keon Coleman there. I do like the signing of Curtis Samuel. Um, and then obviously they had Khalil Shakir, who was kind of coming on there at the end. They signed Chiefs legend Mark MVS. Um, and I still like their running back, Cook. Um, obviously, they have two tight end ones essentially with Dawson Knox and goddamn
Kincaid.
Kincaid. Um, but as far as the Chiefs go, I mean, we kind of expect this now, right? So obviously, Sky Moore project hasn't panned out yet. I still don't think they're ready to give up on him. He is kind of one that I'm curious. Um, is he on the bubble heading into training camp? And we'll dive into training camp stuff in a few weeks when things get going. Or are they willing to give him one more shot? I mean, he's not costing you guys anything. Um, obviously, Rasheed Rice, can he stay out of trouble? And what's the NFL going to do suspension wise? I don't. Nothing's come out. I don't think anything is quite yet. Um, obviously, the Tony projects failed, and I think he might actually be on the outside looking in. He's going to have a really good training camp. Um, and then, again, I still think those are still going to be probably two of your top three AFC teams, the Bills and the Chiefs.
So you still think, man, that's wild because I essentially um, kind of showing how teams are so different, and if you put a cap on positions, how it would take a situation like this out because they both have the top two quarterbacks in my eye. They have the top two quarterbacks, roughly same annual value and everything. Uh, but one team seems a little more solid and sturdy than the other one. So it's basically I'm saying they seem like they're trying to do the same thing, or at least kind of had the same idea on how to build your roster, but they're going about it completely different. Um, Bills are kind of gearing up to like they're going to be a nasty ground and pound team now, but and good for them. But I don't know if they have what it takes. It seemed like they thought they had to get rid of so much money when in reality their quarterback contract's sitting well, and they just got rid of everyone.
Yeah. So I obviously it's unfair pressure to put back on to Josh Allen, but I agree with you. Um, I don't know about top two, but I would put him in the top four, top five range as far as quarterbacks go, which means I do think he's good enough to carry them.
Man, talent wise, like I'm a Chiefs fan, but talent wise, he might be the best in the league.
And that's why maybe in the back of my mind, I do think he is, and that's why I'm going to say that I think he can kind of weather this storm, and I think he's a good enough quarterback. He's just another one of those quarterbacks where his turnovers are just at the worst fucking time
They're
possible.
dumb turnovers. They at 100%.
Yeah, so can his decision making be better? I think once you saw Joe Brady take over as the OC last year, there was that confidence back into Josh Allen. Um, I think it helps with the relationship that he was able to get with Shakir towards the back end of the season. I still think Diggs is a huge loss. Don't get me wrong, but you know that relationship that he was able to build with the two tight ends and then Shakir. Now he's going to have training camp with Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel is going to be a sneaky good pickup. Just the things that they can do with him, and even Keon Coleman um, being that outside guy. So I still do. I still do like the Bills' chances. I just think this is now the point where we're going to see. Okay, Josh, you think you're one of the better ones. You think you're one of those elite quarterbacks. Now you got to carry us into the season, and let's kind of see what you're made of as far as do you want more money? I mean, show us that we can't move on from you. Show us that we need to make sure that you're our quarterback for your whole career.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with almost all of that. I'm also in the camp of I think it was addition by subtraction with Stephon Diggs, not from a talent standpoint. Um, and I don't know him personally, so kind of just going off of what we think we know about him. Um, Having a personality like that a little bit, especially he got there when Josh was pretty young, still trying to learn. Um, Having a personality like that can kind of hinder you a little bit. Um, Instead of going through looks, it kind of got to the point where sometimes Josh said, "Bucket digs down there somewhere,"
Yeah,
and that hurts a little bit. We saw it the first year. We Chiefs got rid of Tyreek. Offense kind of became more efficient with Juju. Spread the ball around. Um, we had less fuck it Tyreek's down there somewhere, and kind of more sustained drives and going through looks and going where you're supposed to. So I from a standpoint, I do think the Bills are okay. Uh, I guess my point of view is more from the salary cap standpoint of um, you don't necessarily spend it to better the team around them. I guess the Bills seem like they're going the direction of we're going to build the roster on um, how we want to play football, and kind of to your point, and hope Josh can cover the rest. Um, and where the Chiefs are, they're going to spend every penny they can to get up against the salary cap, put as much talent out there as possible, uh, everywhere but receiver, and hope that Patrick can do the rest. So I see similarities in the teams, but I guess the way that they've built their teams just seems different to me. Uh, it's hard for me to think that the Bills will be the Bills with everything they got rid of. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge Josh Allen fan, so any year I can get a Chiefs Bills AFC Championship game, I'm going to sign up for it. Um, but I don't know. It just seems like the Bills gave up too soon, and then they didn't really seem to try to help Josh Allen. They just seemed to put more on his plate, which was wild because he already had 7 plates full
right.
in that organization. So I don't know. It was from the salary can standpoint, it just seemed two different directions, even though it should have been like a similar situation for the two.
Yeah, and I think with Patrick, I mean, it's easy to sit here and say it's a salary cap. As far as receivers go, as long as Trav's playing, I'm not worried about Patrick. He's always going to have Travis there. There'll never be another QB receiver slash tight end duo um, that can lean on each other so much and know what each other's doing, like those two guys. Um, but for salary cap purposes, I do believe I was hearing or slash reading something about the Chiefs promised Patrick he would be in the top 8 or 7 or something. So whenever the QB market resets, they always will revisit um, his contract and kind of bump his pay up to get him back into the top, whatever that number was. I think it is 7th or 8th, maybe even I think as high as 6. I don't remember. I'll have to look at that more. Um, so there's always that deal. of, hey, we know the markets are going to reset. And Patrick's always been a guy of, I don't care about the money part of this. Um, I just want my friends and my teammates to get taken care of as well. Um, so that's why you keep seeing them year after year. It seems like he's converting some of his stuff into bonuses to take pressure off the cap. Or hey,
Yeah, what was it this last coming into the off season? Was it into this one or into the previous one where he restructured and opened up like $23 million worth of salary cap? Um, you honestly don't see a lot of the top tier quarterbacks doing it. Um, Unfortunately, the one you saw do it most is Tom Brady. Uh,
and that's why they
yeah,
continuously won.
never really liked the guy, but that is why that team always had talent.
And there
And
was
I
multiple
can't hate
times.
Patrick for doing that.
There was multiple times Peyton did the same thing when he was with the Colts, and I know he did it twice when he was with Denver. Um, so again, I mean, that's just being a leader, and that's kind of understanding the roster of, hey, I practice with these guys every day. Yeah, I really, really want this. This guy helps us.
Well,
So if they're going to help us get to where we want to go, then yeah, I mean, give me the money up front instead of just spreading it out.
and the three we just mentioned with Patty, Tom, and Peyton, like those three knew that they could lead a team and carry a team. Um, but all three are very high IQ on the football field and off the football field. They all knew by doing that it made life easier for them. Like it was still going to be hard no matter what, but doing things like that makes it easier for them. Which is why, honestly, I don't know why it's not just why doesn't everyone do that? When you're still getting your money. You're not saying I'm going to take $23 million less than what you promised me. It's just coming to me in a different form
Signing
and
bonus.
helping the team.
Yeah.
So to me, it's wild that every quarterback who is paid 25% of the cap, why wouldn't you do that? You're making life easier for you, making it better for you, and just increasing your chances of winning and keeping or getting better talent. Um, and who knows, maybe Trevor will do that. And we'll all in 3 years be like, "Damn, Trevor, a boy, you knew what you needed to do, you did it, and now look at you." But yeah, it's crazy to think that some quarterbacks don't do that.
Yeah, and again, I get, you know, get your money. I guess you don't want it quicker, or you don't. I guess I don't understand the mindset of that. Of you know, no, I'm not gonna move money around. No, no, like this, and this. But you still see Peyton Manning. There was that stretch where it was Manning and Brady in the Super Bowl every year with Roethlisberger a couple times. And now it's been Patrick
Yeah,
and Joe Burrow.
and we're definitely pro player. We're always, hey, go get your bag, man. Like that's just a perfect example. Huge L'Jarius Sneed fan, probably one of my favorite Chiefs players in the last decade. We couldn't pay him. I have no hard feelings. Go get paid, man. You earned it. I'm not sitting here hating. I'm not sitting here asking why the Chiefs didn't do this or did do that. Had to get rid of. Go get your money. I'm not sitting here saying Trevor Lawrence is stupid for taking this deal.
No,
Yeah,
God,
get your
no,
money,
no,
man.
yes, absolutely.
But we're just trying to view it from just like a schematic point of view, a team point of view. But individually, I feel like we've always kind of been pro player. Like, go get your bag.
Yeah, and we'll always stay that way. So, like 6 years from now, when we're doing our podcast, we have 10 million followers, and Bo Nix is up for a contract. We give him 80 mil per season. Hey, he got his bag,
Yeah,
right?
we can be talking. That's so dumb. Why did Denver do that? Flip side, Bo Nix, boy, get your
Yeah,
bag.
get your bag. So that's gonna wrap it up for this week. I know we promised a little bit of NBA Finals talk. There's not much to really talk about as far as that goes. Celtics, did their thing rather easily. Gentlemen sweep. They kind of let the Mavs have it in the fourth game. Um, your boy Jalen Brown with the MVP. So that was, he did his thing. That's just that, no reason to dive into that. So next week we'll kind of dive into hopefully a game seven of a Stanley Cup. Again, follow us on Facebook. We did create a new Instagram page. Go find us on Instagram. Shovik Sports Shit. Give us a like. Give us a comment. And if you want to come on our show, DM us. We'll talk about anything. So until next week, we'll talk to you guys later.